Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 483, and today's date is October 3rd, 2014, and the title of this episode is Manipulated Unemployment Rate Drops as the Economic Collapse Accelerates. Now, today they came out with the unemployment numbers, and we see it has dropped from 6.1% down to 5.9%. Everyone's looking at this going, oh my God, we're in a recovery. Things look absolutely fabulous. But we realize that these numbers are completely manipulated. They're fake, phony, and false. We understand there's midterm elections coming up, and also they need to continually convince the American people and the world that we are in some type of recovery when we are really not. Of course, Obama was out there saying that, yes, we are in a recovery. Things are much better. You just don't feel it. For those people living in tents, under overpasses, we are truly in a recovery. Soon you'll be able to feel it. You just can't feel it right now. And of course we know he's full of it, because if there is a true recovery, what you really feel is security in a job. You feel like you're getting well paid. You feel like now you can go out and spend in retail. You can save money to purchase a home or a car, and things look bright and cheerful as you go forward. But what we're seeing right now, a lot of people getting laid off. Severance packages are starting to run out. They're sending out resumes. They're getting no responses whatsoever. And what happens is people get upset. They get pissed off. They go through all the different emotions, and they stop sending out resumes saying there's just nothing out there, and they go out and they take a part-time job, or they start something for themselves instead of getting that same job. Now, of course, all of a sudden, they can't pay for their house, they can't pay for their car, and things start to fall apart. Now, those people who pretty much say there's just nothing out there, they say those people have fallen off. But what I say is that the labor market has given up on these people. Because if you have a skill and you were working just a month before and you started sending out resumes and there's nothing out there, and you continually change your resume and you change it and you keep doing what you need to do and you still can't find a job, well, that tells you something. That tells you there are no jobs for you in this price range, in this industry anymore. And what that means is the labor market is falling apart in that area. And this is what many, many people are saying. I talk to a lot of friends, a lot of relatives, a lot of people have been laid off, and I'm hearing the same exact stories. I even have a friend, my wife's friend, who is in New York, who is a headhunter where they get jobs for consultants in the tech industry, and he's saying since August, jobs have just been drying up. They can't find any out there, and they don't know what they're going to do with all of these people who want to work. They get paid per hour. They're not a full-time employee, and a lot of these companies have taken on consultants instead of hiring full-time employees, because it's easier to have them and bring them on. They don't have to give them pension. They don't have to give them health insurance, and they can get rid of them very easily. And we can see this happening quite often throughout the country, where a lot of companies are taking on consultants, and we're seeing that starting to dry up now. And we can see that this is all leading to the collapse. Now, they can manipulate these numbers as much as they possibly want. I mean, they can bring it down to 3%. It's still not going to change the fact that people cannot find work. The Christmas season is going to be absolutely awful. The real estate market's falling apart. Stores continually close, and I don't know what they're going to say after the Christmas season. Of course, they'll say it was too cold for people to go out, it was this, it was that, and they'll just continually make things up as we go along. Now, out in Europe, they are having a depression type of feel, and things out there are completely getting worse. What we are seeing is that manufacturing is slowing down, new orders are slowing down, and we see this throughout Europe. And we see youth unemployment, we see regular unemployment continually going up. The Eurozone business grew at the slowest rate this year in September, reflecting falling demand in the region where new orders were the weakest in almost a year. The PMI suggests that Eurozone economy remains stuck in a rut in the third quarter. Yes, because most of the countries are in a depression, some of them are in a recession, and some of them are heading in that direction. And this cannot be sustained. There's no way out of it. There's nothing these central bankers can do at this point in time. Well, there is one, and that is what they're doing right now, trying to start World War III. Now, here in the U.S., we are seeing that the unemployment rate has dropped from 6.1 to 5.9%. Of course, Obama's out there trying to convince everyone that, yes, see, we are in a recovery. Look, we just manipulated the numbers, and everything looks great. You just can't feel it. And all those people that don't have jobs, don't worry. You have to believe me. We are in a recovery. And we see the labor participation rate has dropped to a 36-year low. Now, those people not in the labor force rose to 315,000 people, bringing the labor participation rate to about 92.6 million people not in the labor force at this time. And we see 4 of the 5 top jobs that were added in September are low or minimum wage. And what are these jobs? Well, retail, trade, leisure, hospitality, education, and health and temp were of the lowest quality and paying jobs possible. So yes, America added a whole lot of minimum wage waiters, stock clerks, groundkeepers, and temps. Truly the stuff that normal recoveries are completely made of. And we can see right now that this is not a recovery. These are people who are working at good jobs, who are being laid off, who get a severance package. Those run out. They continually send out resumes. They can't find work. They go on unemployment, and eventually what happens is they take 1 or 2 low-paying jobs because they cannot find any of the high-paying jobs. We also see this with college graduates who are graduating. They cannot find jobs in their major, so what happens? They take a part-time job, and they work there. They live with their parents, and this makes the unemployment numbers look better than they really are, because what they do is they remove all the people who are no longer looking. They feel that those people have just fallen off and they don't want jobs anymore. They don't want to support their family. They don't want food. They don't want to go on trips. They don't want anything. They'd rather not work. And, of course, those people in retail who don't meet the number of hours or number of dollars they make each week, and the store closes, those people are not considered or taken into account for unemployment. Those people who have not been on an interview in 4 weeks, those people are not counted. So we can see right now these numbers are really, really skewed. And if you had a full-time job, say making $90,000 a year, and you went ahead and you got 2 part-time jobs, there's 2 more full-time jobs that are added to the unemployment numbers. This is how they manipulate everything to make everyone think that everything is just okay. Now, the September jobs that were added were pretty much in the age group between 55 and 69. Those were 230,000 of those jobs added. And those are the low-paying jobs for the people who are most likely retiring at this point. The prime age between 25 and 54, only 10,000 were added in that group. So we can see there is a huge, huge problem. Now, if we look at the teen data, we see 1 in 5 teens in the United States, 20%, were unemployed in September, meaning that they actively sought a job but did not find one. The 20% unemployment rate for teens aged 16 to 19 years is more than 3 times as high as the 5.9% that they've just reported out there in the corporate media. And we can see right now is that all these people coming out of college, the teens, and the people who are being laid off in the age bracket between 25 and 54, this is the meat and the next generation of our country. And pretty much if you look in all the other countries, they're having the same exact problem. Because what has happened is all these jobs are being completely wiped out, and all we're seeing is low-paying jobs. And why do you think they want to bring the illegals in? Because they want to bring the amount of pay way, way down. They don't want this going up, and we're seeing the average wage actually is coming down. Now, the middle class comfort has plunged to a 4-year low. Bloomberg's consumer comfort gauge dropped to 4-month lows this week with across-the-board collapses in personal finance confidence, buying climate, and the state of the economy. 78% of the people say the economy is not good. So people realize that this whole economy is not doing what the president says it is doing, and he's completely out of touch of what's really going on. And of course, we know why he's doing this. He's building it up, trying to convince everyone that we are on our way to a recovery, so when the main event occurs, they can blame this on another group or another country. Now, we're seeing more evidence out there, and these are real economic indicators like the Baltic Dry Index. When we look at real estate, when we look at retail, and we really look at what is going on, and we see things completely declining and imploding, we see that business activity has dropped on new orders, and they're at a 4-month low. Market services PMI fell for the 3rd month in a row to its lowest since May. We also see real estate prices, home prices, starting to pretty much roll over at this point. Now, I have a graph on the X22Report.com site, and we can see that the bubble that has formed from basically 2011 all the way up to 2014. We've hit the top of the bubble. It is coming down right now, and this bubble kind of looks like what happened prior to 2008. So it looks very, very similar, but this time we're coming from a point where we had to make up huge amount of gains, and now it's coming down. Just to give you some understanding of what this looks like, back in 2006, we hit an index of almost 19. So we were at a point of 19, and the housing price index came down to negative 19 in 2009. The U.S. government and central bankers were able to pump up the bubble once again, bringing the index up to about 14. And at this point in time, we are hovering around 5 or 6, which is the index. So we are dropping like a rock, and we are going to go way past that negative 19 index number, and it is going to fall apart as time goes on. Again, like I said, we went through the spring, we went into the summer. This was the hot time for real estate. We're heading into the fall, we're heading into the winter. Things are completely falling apart. I mean, just look what's happening. Pending, existing, all declining. Mortgage applications, refinancing applications, all imploding. Banks, mortgage companies laying off the people in their mortgage departments. Why? Because there's just no Americans out there to purchase the home. They just don't have it anymore. They lost most of their wealth during 2008, 2009 going forward. We also see hedge funds and investment companies. They are bailing on the real estate market. They're getting out. They want to sell because they realize the bubble has reached the top. We are heading down. Yes, we might see a dead cat bounce, maybe, but I don't think we might not, because we are heading fast and furious straight down to the bottom here. And of course, in the corporate media, I see a headline that says the new unemployment numbers might show a rebound for housing, which is absolutely ridiculous, because as we go throughout this year, we're going to see more stores close. We're going to see the real estate market completely go into the dumps, and these numbers aren't even going to make sense anymore. They can bring them down to 3%. It won't even make a difference. Okay, now we've talked a lot about Ebola, and we talked about what the government is trying to do with this Ebola. And if we look in West Africa right now, we see it is still contained in these countries. It really hasn't spread over the borders whatsoever. And of course, we've had this strange man, Thomas Eric Duncan, who flew all around the world, wasn't inspected, and the government officials are very lax in what they're doing. They're saying, oh, we don't have to test those people on the plane. We really don't have to care about what's been going on. We believe they're not infected, and this could be for an overall agenda and of pretty much suspending the Constitution, taking away your rights. But if there was a major Ebola pandemic in America, all of the liberties and the freedoms that we are currently enjoying right now will basically be gone. If the government officials believe that you have the virus, federal laws allows them to round you up and detain you for such time in such manner as may be reasonable and necessary. In addition, the CDC already has the authority to quarantine healthy Americans if they reasonably believe that they have become sick. During an outbreak, the government can force you to remain isolated in your home, or the government may forcibly take you to a treatment facility, a tent city, or any other type of place like a military base or a camp. You could have any choice. You don't have any choice in the matter, basically. You have to do what they're telling you to do. And this is under 42 USC 264D. Regulations prescribed under this section may provide for the apprehension and examination of any individual reasonably believed to be infected with a communicable disease in a qualifying stage and to be moving or about to move from state to state, to be a probable source of infection to individuals who, while infected with such disease in a qualifying stage, will be moving from a state to another state. Such regulations may provide that if, upon examination, any such individual is found to be infected, he may be detained for such time and in such manner as may be reasonably and necessary. For purposes of this subsection, the term state includes, in addition to the several states, only the District of Columbia. For purpose of this subsection, the term qualifying stage with respect to a communicable disease means that such disease is in a communicable stage, is in a pre-communicable stage, if the disease would be likely to cause a public health emergency if transmitted to other individuals. In addition, as discussed above, the CDC already has the authority to isolate people that are not sick to see if they do become sick. So you can see all this is already put in place. Everything is put into place to make sure that your rights are completely taken away. And they don't even have to really spread the Ebola. They just can have a couple cases and put the fear in every single person and round people up. And we can see they definitely could act on this. Now, we understand that, Thomas Eric Duncan, he flew all around the globe, and he pretty much lied on his health form, and this is why the Liberian government is out there trying to sue him, and he is in quarantine right now, where they quarantine him, his family, and there's many other people that they're looking at this point in time. But what's very interesting in West Africa is we still haven't seen the contagion go outside of these countries at all. It has not spread through Africa like you would think it would. Instead, we're seeing people get on planes and fly to different countries right now and bringing it into different countries. Now, every country, of course, these are all suspected cases. None of them are really confirmed. We see the one here in the United States confirmed. But what's very interesting is in Liberia, they passed a law which will restrict the media coverage of the Ebola outbreak there. They don't want the media taking pictures of what's really going on, which is very interesting. And what is the reason they don't want this? And it just came out today that instead of sending 3,000 military soldiers to Liberia, they're going to be sending 4,000. So they just upped it. So we're looking at mission creep for West Africa. They're continually adding more and more soldiers to this area. Now, of course, we still have that statement from the U.S. ambassador to Liberia where, hey, I know the troops are coming in here, but we're not going to be removing the government and putting in a puppet government. That's not why this is happening. Now, once a government official comes out and says something like this, you know it is the opposite, and you can see this is exactly what they're trying to do. Now, there is another case of Ebola, which is in D.C., and again, this is a suspected, it's not confirmed as of yet as I'm doing this, so we can see that it is popping up in all different places. Now, in Hong Kong, we see the protesters are still protesting, and we can see that the residents of Hong Kong are coming out, and they're going up against the pro-democracy activists. So we're seeing two sides now. We're seeing the residents of Hong Kong, and we're seeing the pro-democracy activists. This is very similar to Ukraine, where we had the pro-EU and the non-pro-EU taking sides. And this is what the U.S. government loves to do. They love to have the groups take sides and then fight in the middle and make sure that it really gets violent to bring in government forces, because they understand that the government always resorts to violence. They always push down the people. And of course, the U.S. government can use this and say, hey, you see, this is what's happening. They're quashing their ability to speak freely, to have democracy, and this is the plan they always use in each one of these things. Now, the protesters said that if authorities do not act to protect the unarmed, peaceful demonstrators, they would retract an agreement to hold talks with the city government as proposed by Hong Kong's leaders. So they did agree to have some talks here, and again, they're saying if this isn't stopped, they're going to back out. And basically what has happened is they decided that they're going to back out because they never really wanted to have talks. Behind these so-called Occupy Central protests, what do we see? We see the U.S. government. We see the masquerade as a pro-democracy movement seeking universal suffrage and full democracy is a deep and insidious network of foreign financial, political, and media support. Prominent among them is the U.S. State Department and its National Endowment for Democracy, as well as the subsidiary, the National Democratic Institute. So they're all funding this and they're all in on this. Basically, the U.S. is taking much more overt stance in supporting the chaos their own manipulative networks have prepared and are now orchestrating the entire thing. The White House has now officially backed the Occupy Central. So we can see right now the United States is completely backing what is going on here. They need to, because they need to push this agenda forward to try to create havoc in China, to try to derail what China is trying to do and try to break China apart and have it not go forth on January 2015 with the BRIC nations where everything goes live. And they're trying to stop this before this time. Now, of course, the Hong Kong protesters, they have completely shelved the talks with the government. They're saying that we are not going to have any type of talks right now, and we're backing off on this because the government is really not listening to what we want and what we're doing, and we can see right now that all of this is being pushed very, very hard. But in some of the areas, the pro-democracy crowds are starting to shrink, and it's losing its momentum, and we'll have to see what the United States central bankers start to do at this point to see if they can really push this and really have it go really, really hot. But I'm hoping the Chinese government can quash this entire thing without violence whatsoever, have it just die out by itself, have the residents in the area say, no, we are not doing this at this time, and we're just going to have to watch this very, very carefully. Now, out in Ukraine, it looks like the self-defense forces have pretty much taken back the Donetsk airport, which was held by the Ukrainian government, and it looks like the ceasefire, even though there is one, there's still fighting going on in certain areas, and they pretty much took back the entire area. Now, the Ukrainian government, they are going to keep their heavy weaponry in the area. They're not going to remove it until the ceasefire is fully observed. So they're not moving out whatsoever, and we can see that this really isn't going anywhere. Russia is continually trying to keep the peace, but the United States, Poland, and all the other nations, they're just sitting here saying, listen, we want war. We just want this to go full-fledged war, and we want it to happen now. Now, it looks like Kiev is still pushing the idea that they want Crimea back and they want the southeast back. The Kiev government still hopes to bring back Crimea that seceded from Ukraine and joined Russia earlier this year, and needs the help from the international community. They believe if they can get the international community, they can bring back Crimea and the southeast. Now, what do they really mean by this? Do they mean, ooh, we got all the military weapons, we're reinforced, we have the military soldiers in place now, let's go ahead, we just need the international community on board, like NATO, the U.S., Poland, all the other countries to get involved to help us take back these regions? Putin now has signed a law on ratification of the Eurasian Economic Union Treaty, and he signed this between Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan, and they will be trading now through this. Now, it looks like Germany's National Security Council has approved export of weapons such as tanks and machine guns to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and several other Arab nations. And, of course, they are bringing in a lot of military assets. The U.S. is doing this. France is doing this. And we can see they are definitely preparing for something very, very big. Now, we understand that Yemen, Libya, Lebanon, Iraq, they are all in chaos. The tribes in each one of these countries are rising up. Of course, they call them Al-Qaeda, they call them Islamists, they call them the Islamic State, whatever they're using, because they see them as terrorists. They don't see them as the people of their countries. And the United States has launched a program to supply unmanned aerial vehicles to the U.S.-trained Yemen Army. They're going to be giving these drones to them to use on the people who are rising up. This marked the first U.S. announced contract for UAVs for Yemen, which has been fighting a losing battle against the tribes of Yemen. Officials said that the Yemen Army used a Scan Eagle for counterinsurgency operations. The platform, with an endurance of 20 hours and 3.1-meter wingspan, can be launched without an airfield. And we can see right now they realize they're losing here, and the United States is going to do anything they possibly can to make sure the puppet governments are not removed. And we can see already, just look at what they're doing right now. Washington is going to release $26 million to Yemen in military aid and boosting funds to armies in 5 other nations. How are they doing this? Well, they're going to waive the sanctions imposed for recruiting child soldiers. So at this point, they don't care if these countries recruit child soldiers. They're removing the sanctions, sending the money down to them, millions of dollars, to Yemen, Rwanda, Somalia, to all of these nations to help the puppet governments keep control of the nation. So you can see where their heads are at. They don't care about anything. They only care about their money. And when it comes down to it, this is the proof right here that they don't care. Oh, yeah, we put sanctions in place because you're bringing in children into the army. Oh, wait a minute. The puppet regime is losing ground here. The people are taking over the countries. Well, we're just going to waive that now. We don't really care. We're going to send you the money because we rather have you take control of the country, and we don't care if you bring children into the armed forces. Unbelievable. Now, the French president is out there, and he is saying that he pledged to further boost military offensive in Iraq to combat the Islamic State. Australia right now, Canberra has authorized deployment of special forces to Iraq to join the operation against militants of the Islamic State. From now on, the Australian Air Force craft present in the region will also take part in combat mission against the terrorists. It has only ever been a matter of time that Australia was going to send about 600 military personnel and aircraft deployed to the United Arab Emirates Air Base in mid-September would be officially used in military operations against the forces of the Islamic State. So we can see all countries getting involved right now, bringing their military assets, but the real reason they're doing this is because they realize that the Mideast is falling apart. The people there are rising up. The people in Iraq are rising up. They're headed towards Baghdad. No, this is not the Islamic State. It is the people of Iraq, and they're using the Islamic State to mask what is really going on. This is why they're saying the Islamic State is now in Lebanon. Pretty soon you'll hear they're in Libya. Pretty soon you'll hear they're in Yemen, and pretty much everyone will be the Islamic State. But this is what they do. The people now are the terrorists, and they're trying to convince everyone they're bombing the Islamic State when they really are not. Now, there's a report out there saying that the Mideast is completely in chaos, and they're worried about all these nations sliding towards a warlord era where groups will take control of these countries and they will be warlords reigning over these countries. No, they will be the people reigning over their own countries. They have elected their own parliament. They have elected their own president, And of course, the United States central bankers do not want this to happen, because eventually what's going to happen is they're going to kick out the central bank. They're not going to use the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. They're going to use any other currency that they want, and this is what they cannot have happen. Now, there's reports out there that the Islamic State has opened up their first consulate in Turkey. The Islamic State terrorists have reportedly opened a consulate in Turkey and use it to issue visas for those who want to join the fight against the Syrian and Iraqi governments. The militants are said to be operating freely inside the country without much of a problem. Why? Because this whole thing is driven by Turkey, Israel, UK, United States, and other Arab nations. Of course they're roaming around free. They control them. It's their proxy army. Other reports said the members of the group have rented luxurious houses in the upscale neighborhood of the capital and Istanbul and use them for residence or as offices. I mean, really? Seriously? So we can see right now they are completely controlled by all these countries. It's not a terrorist group that they want you to believe that it is. Basically what it is a proxy army. They put it together. There's paid mercenaries involved. It's just like the Free Syrian Army. That they're basically one and the same. And you can see that this is complete propaganda, and it is absolutely ridiculous of what is really going on here. If they can go in and out of Turkey without any type of problem, you know from just that Turkey has no problem with them, because they're part of the entire system of what is going on. Now, Syria is out there, and they're saying any Turkish action on the territory of Syria will be interpreted as aggression by Syria. So we can see right now they're giving them a warning. We know you had your vote on October 2nd. We understand that you're coming after Assad, and if you do anything inside Syria, it will be interpreted as an act of aggression. And we can see right now Erdogan in the past tried a couple false flags to try to get into Syria, to have NATO move into Syria, but it just didn't work out. And we can see right now that Assad is onto what is going on here. Now, like I said in my other reports, it seems like the U.S. military is bombing major infrastructure buildings, grain silos, refineries, and I see now they've just bombed a military airport. And I thought this was going to come, and it did. Here we are in Raqqa. They bombed the Tabqa military airport. They blew it to bits. This way the Syrian armed forces cannot take control of it, because what are they going to do? Well, they're going to be setting up a no-fly zone in Syria. It's going to be a buffer zone on the Turkey-Syria border, which would be enforced by a no-fly zone to ensure security. A buffer zone, of course, has been part of the NATO agenda against Syria since the beginning of the Western-controlled crisis in the country. Remember, it was under the guise of humanitarian corridor or buffer zone in Libya that NATO bombing took place, which ultimately led to the destruction of the Libyan government, the murder of Gaddafi. So we can see they're doing the same exact thing again. It also happened back in Iraq in 2003. The Obama administration is also stating that it is open to the possibility of establishing a no-fly zone over Syria, which we know this is exactly what they want to do, and this is why they're starting to bomb the air bases in that area and pretty much decimate the infrastructure in that area. And what we're seeing right now is reports are coming out of Washington that the Obama administration is in the planning stages of establishing a no-fly zone over the northern and eastern part of Syria. No-fly zones will be implemented, and I bet you they will occur right after the midterm elections in November, and we are going to see no-fly zones over the entire area. Now, we understand that J.P. Morgan was hit by a massive data breach, and we can see this has been ongoing and really being ramped up, where we're seeing nude picture leaks. We're seeing the financial institutions being hit, and they're saying about 76 million households Their information was impacted. And we have to remember, CISA and CISPA are still floating around Congress, pending in the Senate, getting ready to be voted on. They're trying to really push this agenda really hard. Of course, most likely they'll end up blaming this all on Russia or China or whoever they want to blame it on, to say that they're bombarding us with cyber attacks. Of course, Mike Rogers wants to hit Russia before they hit us again, pretty much to start the war up here. And we can see right now that they stole, some information like name, address, phone number, and email address. But the real motivation for all of this is to have the company share the information with the U.S. government. And this is exactly what they want. They want all corporations to share the information. Obama has already set up the executive orders to support CISA or CISPA. He's already made a volunteer program. I don't know how many companies are volunteering the information, but once CISA or CISPA is passed, the companies can give your information to the government and they cannot be held liable for doing so. And again, all this is going to be done to find out where you have funds, where you're purchasing, where you're saving money. This is the information the government wants, and they want it freely so they can come after you. Now, it seems like there's a little bit of propaganda out there about this DHS chatter, and they're saying that terrorists will be coming over the border, and they're purposely infecting themselves with Ebola, and they're going to bring it into the country. And you can see that, of course, this is propaganda. It's a fear tactic. And again, all they need is a lot of fear and make people believe that this is happening and show a couple of cases, and they can pretty much lock down the country. They don't even need it to go live. They can, create it out of thin air like they do everything else. And we can see right now a lot of propaganda is running wild, and they're really pushing this idea, because we have to understand the entire system is coming down. The collapse is accelerating. We're moving further and further away from their manipulated numbers. They don't even make sense anymore. And what we're seeing is that the entire world is pretty much on the verge of World War III. They're pushing war as hard as they possibly can. And right after these elections, you're going to see everything start to really ramp up. It's going to go full speed ahead. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.